welcome to the Clemson Dubcast. It is March 19th. We are a day away from Clemson's first round NCAA tournament game against McNeese State and one Will Wade. And the specter of that matchup has brought back some extremely fond memories of the old NTBA days, the Noontime Basketball Association. These were lunchtime games at the practice gym at Little John Coliseum. It goes back decades. They don't do it anymore. But back during the heyday, it was football coaches, football staffers, basketball coaches, basketball staffers, assorted media members, including yours truly, a receivers coach named Dabo Swinney, who in 2008, when he became the head coach, started taking a few more liberties, I guess, with fouls and such and no calls. Anyway, there's an article about it on TigerIllustrated.com. You can check that out. Right now, it's been pretty much a hit so far since we published it yesterday. But we're talking to three prominent figures from back in those days. Chad Lampman, who was in the video department at Clemson, Bobby Couch, who was a major fundraiser for IPTAY at that time, and Michael Morrell, current basketball coach at UNC Asheville, who was a part of Oliver Purnell's staff back in the day at Clemson. So this podcast has been going since August of 2018, more than 770,000 downloads of more than 340 episodes, and my great friends Blake Smith and Brooke Archenhold at Parham Smith Archenhold Law Firm have been a part of it for every single one. They are longtime Clemson people, and they give you the experience and the results you need. Their team can help with personal injury and medical malpractice cases. They currently serve North Carolina and South Carolina with offices in Greenville, Spartanburg, and Charleston. If you or your family has been injured, I want you to help you get the compensation you deserve. Schedule a free consultation by calling 864-301-8767 or by going to parhamlaw.com. That's PARHAM law.com. Listen up, Clemson Tiger fans. Founders Federal Credit Union has a new office right on campus in the Hendricks Center. We're here to serve you with the financial tools you need and the personalized service you deserve. Not on campus, Founders has an office conveniently located on Old Greenville Highway. Stop by or visit foundersfcu.com to learn more and apply for a membership. Relax, you're with Founders. Federally insured by NCUA. Membership qualification required. Celero Communications, formerly known as Tandem Payment, is a full-service integrated electronic payments provider powered by leading-edge technology. Celero provides a wide array of merchant solutions, simplified payments. They make onboarding, taking payments, maintaining risk management and compliance, and getting support quick and easy. At Celero, they're all about helping you achieve sustainable growth as a business. Taking payments isn't the only thing your business needs. With Celero's solutions, you can manage inventory, sell products and services via social media, schedule staff, track sales, get reports, and much, much more. Find out more about Celero at celerocommerce.com. That's CELERO commerce.com. Okay, Chad Lampman, Bobby Couch, and Mike Morrell, all three of these were just tremendous conversations and just so much fun reviving some of these memories. All right, joined by the former NTBA Commissioner Chad Lampman. Chad, I'm surprised that's not on your bio on Twitter or LinkedIn or anything.
It should be. It should be. It's one of my proudest moments in my career is running the Noontime Basketball Association at Clemson for, about 7 years.
6-7 years. So you've been at Duke for 15 years?
I have, yeah. Left Clemson in 2010. Been here since then. Yes, sir.
So you were how did you come to be the commissioner? And also, I guess that goes way back to, I'm just doing the math. So 03, 04 is when you started?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, I graduated in 03, December of 03, right after the Peach Bowl. But I started playing, Rick Bagby, my boss, and who's still at Clemson, he was kind of in charge. He'd send the emails out in the morning to see who could play. And, that he kind of handed it over to me. He stopped doing, he had kids about that time. So he said, hey, if you want to play or if you want to take it over, you take it over. And so I did. That was I got hired on full time in January of 2004 and started basically being the commissioner of Noontime Basketball Association.
All right, tell us. I mean, I described it in some detail, just the league and the article that I wrote, but there's still so much more to explain. I guess if you could, in your words, explain what the league. Well, let's start with explain what the commissioner duties were.
Well, honestly, commissioner duties were basically to decide if we had enough to play or not. Every morning, I mean, honestly, before I even started work, it was my first email that went out every morning was to a group list that included a lot of guys and girls actually from the athletic department. Tora Umo was part of that group, and she was probably one of the more feisty players that we had. But yeah, every morning, and I literally would send an email out and say, who's in? And I'd get responses in, out, in. And by the time, if we had enough for 8, then it was game on because we could at least play 4-on-4. But more oftentimes than not, we had between, I would say, 10 and 16. Every once in a blue moon, we'd go. It'd be a lot of people. We'd have 20, and we'd have to split the courts. But if we had 8, we were playing ball, and I would just reply to the whole list. Game on, noon, and we'd go over to Little John in the annex, and we'd play. And it was daily. It was every day, and it was some of the best basketball. A lot of fun. So. You started out, we had to shoot free throws to pick teams. First 4, if we were playing 4-on-4 or 5-on-5, the first 4 or 5 to make it were the first team. And the second 5 to make it, if we had more than 10 there, would be the second team. And then if you didn't make it and we had more than 10 people, you were waiting. And you sat on the court, or you went and did more layups, took jump shots while the first 10 were playing. And pretty simple. It was the 7-by-1s. And everybody thinks, when I tell people that, they're like, oh, that sounds like it goes pretty quick. Well, when you got people waiting and you have a chance, if you lose, you got to shoot to see who stays. So losers got to shoot. It gets pretty competitive. 7-by-1s you think sounds like it goes pretty quick, but you're dealing with a lot of alpha athletes in there. I mean, the who's who, the list of people that were doing it. So there was a lot of debates. We could call it debates over foul or no foul, travel. Was the shot up before the foul? But yeah, when it got to 6-6 or 6-5, it got pretty rough. It was not a game for the week. That's for sure.
So I remember sheepishly asking you. I might have I heard about the NTBA. I can't remember. 08, 09, 10, somewhere in that range. And I think I might have sent you an email because we knew each other just from the behind-the-scenes stuff. And because just for those who don't know, you worked for Rick Bagby at the video folks.
Yes.
I think I just sort of sent you an email and said, hey, man, any possibility a dirty old media guy could get in there? And you're like, yeah, sure, I'll add you to the list. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm on the list. This is
we added you to the list, and you were the sharpshooter out. You sat out there by the 3-point line and started firing up threes. And by that time, it was definitely a who's who. I mean, that had, of course, Dabo. Everybody, Dabo talks about it all the time in his presser. But we had Kevin Nickelberry, as I already said, Toro Umo. Todd Steelman was on from the women's basketball staff, who was, he was on the practice squad at UNC when he was at school there. So good ball player, Billy Napier, Kyle Young, Brandon Streeter. I remember Larry Greenlee from the weight staff. We had a lot of weight guys in there, which made it even rougher sometimes. But that was a lot of fun. I mean, we had a who's who. Will Wade obviously was there too. Andy Farrell, who I think is coaching with Dayton right now. So it was definitely, we had Oliver Purnell's crew there when they were, in their heyday, 06, 07, 08. It was testy. And Dabo would come in. This was before he was a head coach. I mean, him and Billy Napier. Billy was a GA. and the two of them always came over together. I mean, Dabo was always pushing me. If we had 6 or 7, if it was borderline, he'd like, "Come on, Chad, you got to get one more." I'm like, "Coach, Coach, I'm trying to do some work here, but yeah, I'll do some recruiting." Or he would email me at 11:50. "I got one more. Let's go. Game on." I mean, he was. I mean, it was a great run. You played for an hour 15 minutes, and it was one. It was one of my favorite times of the day. Honestly, it was great camaraderie. Henry Guess was in there. We had all heights, all sizes, and it was intense. It was competitive.
So this is interesting. You were there long before I was, and then I was there long after you left. And so I'm sure we can share stories about those two different eras. I know that, well, I want to get your input because you were there when Dabo became the head coach, but some others have said that Dabo became much more of a hustler once he became the head coach because he had that more clout. And I personally witnessed this where people who worked in the football office, graduate assistants and analysts and such, they probably weren't going to call a foul. And Dabo knew that they probably weren't going to call a foul. So, yeah, it was a little bit of physical, I guess.
Yeah, I believe it.
I remember Brent Venable, and I'll let you share here after this, but this story is at the top of my brain. Venables was terrifying. You obviously weren't around for that. Not too skilled on the basketball court, but just a Tasmanian devil, and he was strong as an ox, and he would push you from the behind, elbows, sometimes at your face. And I remember finally when somebody called a foul on him, it was one of his defensive GAs. It was an egregious foul. And he melted down. He melted down and said, I forgot who it was, but he accused the defensive GA. He said, "You're a liar. You do nothing but lie." It was, I thought he was about to start crying. Anyway, what are some of the more heated moments that you can recall that maybe you had to, with your esteemed stature as the commissioner, you had to maybe intervene?
Well, I will say, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, I think everybody who played during that era would say Kevin Nickelberry was definitely the antagonist of that group. There were plenty of times where we had the game on pause for minutes, many minutes, discussing whether a foul or no foul was called and how it should be officiated. I mean, there was Kyle Young, man. When he first started, he had just finished his playing days. I think he went to Virginia Tech to get his master's and came back, and he wasn't at playing weight, but man, he was strong as an ox, and you just didn't go to the middle on him. He would just hammer you. He was the enforcer in the middle. And I still to this day will tell you Billy Napier, and he'll kill me for saying this, but man, dirtiest player in the game. He was. If you ran across the middle and he was on defense, he was catching you with an elbow. He was knocking you off your line. He would just look at you with a sly smile on his face now, and he still has it, man. Sometimes I'll watch a Florida game, and he's on the sideline. I'm like, dude, that guy's a killer on the basketball court. But I mean, all of them, like I said, these are all alpha athletes, and I mean, Ettore Umo she was probably right up there with Kevin Nickelberry on whether a foul should be called or not. She was tough, and Dabo had his own. I mean, like you said, I remember plenty of times people arguing with Dabo and back and forth, and he lost many of battles, but I imagine that has changed over the years with his stature, like you said. But there were times back in the day as he's a wide receiver coach and Billy Napier, the GA, Kyle Young, a GA, Brandon Streeter, GA, Frank Thomas was a assistant coach. Will Wade was a GA. Kevin Nickelberry, assistant under Purnell. Those guys, there were lots of arguments where it's like, all right, guys, we're either going to sit here and argue all day, or we got about 20 more minutes to play. And honestly, it was usually the guys sitting on the wall waiting to play, but like, come on, let's just go. Play it, make a play, make a call. But there were some heated moments. I mean, I can't recall like anyone specifically, but I would guarantee you that if you polled the group back then, Robbie Stewart, I don't know if you remember him, trainer, he was a 3-point specialist too. But if you polled the crew back then, I would say Kevin Nickelberry would probably be at the top of everybody's antagonist list.
It's funny. Back in 2018, I was down in Texas to cover the Clemson A&M football game, and I stayed in Austin because that's what you have to do if you're going
of course.
to the game in College Station. And I went and visited with Shaka Smart, and
that's right.
I relayed these quotes from then in the article that I wrote yesterday just because I thought they were still really fascinating and cool and funny. But, man, he was just all over Dabo. So I had sent Dabo a text the morning of the interview with Shaka before the interview just to let him know that I was going to be talking to him about NTBA. And Dabo responded, Shaka has probably tried to forget those nightmares of me raining threes on him. And so I asked Shaka about it, and he goes, I don't remember him making a single three, but I and here at this point he's just talking smack because he knows Dabo's going to read it probably.
Yep.
And he goes, but I do remember him just running around. He probably covered twice as much ground as any of the other 9 guys out there. He likes to say he can shoot, but he's the exact opposite of that. If you think about and envision the level of energy he has with his team and with the media and with everything he does, that's how he plays noontime hoops. He's a hustler. He dove on the floor. He plays with an infectious passion for winning, but he's not particularly skilled. At least he didn't show it at the time. But I liked having Dabo on my team when we did play because there was less of a chance you were going to get hurt if he was on your team than if you were playing against him. So I got to stick up for Dabo. Dabo's a really good player. Like
absolutely.
He can shoot and he can drive. He had those reverse layups he would do off the baseline drives.
And he'd laugh. And he would laugh going down the court. Because he would just laugh at you. Like he was. I mean, don't get me wrong. He was an antagonist too, but he was in a different way. Like he just not make fun of you, but he's laughing at you as he's going by. He's talking trash. I always say Dabo was the king of the jumper, not a three. Mm-hmm. He had that reverse layup. He'd always hold the ball and he'd jab, and then he'd get you. He kind of put you to sleep. But that mid-range jumper, man, he was lethal. The mid-range jumper. But I mean, Shaka hit the nail on the head. He never stopped. It's like a Energizer bunny, just kept moving, and we would laugh. We'd set screens for him, and he would just run all over the place. And he was always. I mean, it's people ask me all the time. As I've, the past 15 years as I've left Clemson, is that real? I'm like, that's how he played basketball. Like that's literally when we would play noontime hoops, he just wouldn't stop. And even if somehow he missed his free throw and had to go sit, he was on the sideline chirping and talking and cheering for some. If somebody got close to 6, if they were at 6 and are getting ready to finish the game, he was their biggest cheerleader trying to get this game so he could get back on the court. Everybody else is, usually people go to the side and they're sucking wind. They need a game off. No, Dabo's sitting right there cheering for whoever's going to get to 7 the fastest.
So you're a Clemson guy. You left in 2010.
Yeah.
Just to refresh people, Clemson was 6-7 in 2010. Dabo, if not for C.J. Spiller the previous year, might have been fired after that 6-7 season. What has it been like for you? As still a Clemson guy, forever a Clemson guy, what was it like for you to watch them take off in a way that I don't think anybody on the planet, except for maybe Dabo himself, thought was possible?
No, I mean that's you exactly. Like he believed. I remember actually going to tell him that I was leaving. I mean, Dabo and I had gotten pretty close through noontime hoops, and I remember going over and telling him that I was leaving and going to job at Duke, and he made it hard. I mean, he's like, dude, we're building something here, and I want you to be a part of it. I think for those that don't know, I used to make the motivational videos for the team. The Friday night they'd go to the hotel. I did it for Coach Bowden, and I did it for Coach Swinney too. started doing some more video board work and creating all the videos. So he's like, I want you to be a part of this. I'm like, Coach, this is too good of an opportunity for me. Running my own shop. I got to, if I don't do it now, I don't know if I'll ever go, because I just had our first child. So I was like, my roots were pretty deep, but I'm like, if I'm ever going to try this, I got to try it. And dude, I still text with them, not as frequently as I used to, just because, people, you get separated a little bit, but it was great. It's been awesome watching them. I mean, I remember I actually went to the first national championship game out in Arizona with a bunch of buddies from the video staff. We had a great time, great game. I was unable to go to the first national championship win down in Tampa, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Tampa. We had a Duke home basketball game. Either I can't remember if it was that day or the next day, but we watched it with my kids. My kids are it's funny. I swear my kids are like the most spoiled kids ever, because all they've grown up with is Clemson football and Duke basketball. I mean, you want to talk about a spoiled life, and they're going to be teased for the rest of their lives, not knowing like, okay, hold on, you cheer for Clemson football and Duke basketball. That's pretty. That's a front runner right there, a bandwagon. But they get it honest, and they still cheer for Clemson basketball too. I mean, I have two older daughters now. They're in high school sports, and they are huge Clemson softball fans. But we still wear orange. I go home, and Duke has incorporated me into their family, and we do love it here. But when I go home, I still have plenty of orange. We still watch every game. I had a huge embrace with Dabo when they finally came back to Wallace Wade Stadium, which seems like forever. They've only played twice here. I've been here 15 years. This is how messed up the ACC is, if you ask me. But, in my 15 years, Clemson's played twice here. The first time was, I believe, 2012 when Sammy Watkins, I think he had about 600 yards of receiving from Taj Boyd. And then, I guess, unfortunately, if you're a Clemson football fan, was most recently 2 years ago, opening day, when Duke got the win. But, that was – I hugged Dabo. We talked forever. He wanted to know if I played hoops here. I mean, I got one little quick story, too. When I first came to Duke, I wanted to know if they played hoops. And they're like, yeah, we play at noon, and sometimes we play in Cameron. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to play in Cameron. I'm like, this will be awesome. What's the format? And they said, well, Woj and Collins like to play to 100. I'm like, 100? They're like, yeah, usually it could take an hour. It could take 2 hours. I'm like, we just play. They say the first 8 or the first 10 that are in. There's no subs. There's no, you lose, you sit. You literally just play to 100 points. And I'm like, I don't even know if I can count to 100. But so here we are. My first day, I'm on the court. I'm in Cameron playing with, at the time was Wojo, Collins, but they always were on the same team. This is what cracks me up. There was no shoot for teams. It was Wojo, it was Collins at the time, Nate James, and I'm trying to remember, I can't remember who else, but then it was basically the support staff. Me, a couple SIDs who had played like D2, D3 ball. It was competitive, but by the time you get to 60 or 70, you're sucking air, and I'm used to like sprinting to 7 points and then getting a break. This is insane. But every school does it a little different, and everybody that's come in to Duke, and I'm sure that just like you said at Clemson, I'm sure it's changed over time as people come in and out. Do they still play to 7 by ones?
There's no more NTBA, Chad.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so
it's done.
When the football program built the Taj Mahal or the Dabo Land, big old football operations facility, they have their own basketball court now, and so I think they have games over there, but it's not as inclusive, I guess I should say. I think it's mainly just football, and so there's more separation from basketball. And I don't know how much the annex was, or they redid the basketball annex and built a new facility. And I don't know how available that was, the frequency of availability. So it kind of fizzled, I think, for a while. But, I believe there are games now over at football, but I don't believe I'm invited. So,
well, that doesn't surprise me, honestly. I mean, I've seen it here at Duke, too. Like, the way the athletic departments have ballooned. I mean, that was a tight-knit group we had back in the day. And I sound like an old man, and I don't think I'm an old man, but it is neat. I will tell you, like, those are bonds that carry with me today. I still text Billy Napier. I told you, I think I texted you when we were talking about coming on. I don't remember what year this was. Duke played VCU in Brooklyn, and Will Wade was coaching VCU at the time. And I was traveling with Duke basketball at the time, and I was sitting up for a post-game press conference waiting for Coach K, and Will Wade came in first. And honestly, I had forgotten that he was coaching VCU at the time, and so I was pumped to see him, but I didn't. I was going to wait till after the press conference to go say hi to him. So he climbs up on the podium, and I'm in the back with the camera guys. And so one of the news guys next to me asked a question, and he looked at and he goes, "Hold on, is that?" He goes, "Chad." Chad Lamont, and we literally had a conversation in the middle of Brooklyn, New York, on a post-game press conference after Duke handed him a 20-point loss.
It was post-game. Oh my goodness!
Yeah, right in the middle of the press conference. I mean, a small exchange back and forth, and then after it was over, I went over and off camera and on the side, and we hugged and caught up. But I said hi to Kevin Nickelberry. Obviously when Florida State came back here this past year. He was on that staff, and so I went and talked to him, and Ettore Umo, who I believe is now Virginia Tech. But she was obviously the head coach at Clemson. I caught up with her days, and she was actually lived here for a little while. That's another one. Her husband Harold. I mean, Harold was a trash talker too. I mean, I'm sure you remember Harold. He got into it. But yeah, I mean, Kyle Young actually. I don't think he's the baseball admin anymore. He might be, but I remember he came up for an ACC baseball tournament at Durham. This is probably 7, 8, 10 years ago, but he actually played some noontime hoops with us up here. He wanted to know if we had a game on their off day, and he played some ball with us up here. So, I mean, those are bonds that, will last a lifetime, but it's also the good and the bad of athletic departments, I guess. As people balloon, and it's happened here at Duke. We build bigger buildings. We move on. Football goes to their own world, and basketball's in their own. Everybody's siloed off anymore. So you're siloed off, and you don't have those relationships as an athletic department as a whole, like you used to. I mean, that's me getting on my just rant here of they're the relationships that you used to have at the Power 5 level. Just you don't have them as much anymore within your own athletic department. And those NTBA days, that was the pinnacle. That was awesome. I'll never forget those days. And
there's so much more, maybe paranoia in controlling the message, because now in the age of instant, Twitter, whatever, for all they know, if Dabo goes off on somebody, yelling at somebody in an NTBA game and the wrong person's there, it could be on Twitter or whatever, TikTok, right away. Anyway,
no doubt.
Not that that's why it doesn't exist anymore. But I remember because when Clemson was struggling, I didn't really pull many punches. Okay, so this is before their national championship caliber. Like I said, 6-7. Even in the 2009 season, they started off, losing it to Maryland, just a horrible loss. And I remember I would know Dabo was not happy with something that I wrote at NTBA when we would win a game. He's on my team, and I'd go give him a 5, and he would not give me a 5. And I would be like, "Oh crap!" And I have to wait till afterward and say, "Hey man, is there something wrong?" Yeah, is there something wrong? Well, yeah, man, you wrote this about Dwayne Allen, and blah, blah, blah. You're Tiger Illustrated. You're supposed to be, on our team. And I'm like, no, I'm not.
I remember that. Yep. I do. I remember those times. I absolutely remember him kind of dressing you up and down, like, "Hey, come on now," and you're like, "No, I'm sticking to it." But it's crazy what they've turned into, and I have a little bit of envy and jealousy of man, if I'd have just stayed, I could have been a part of that. Dabo, he put a full court press on, and I don't think about it every now and then that, man, I could have been a part of that. But I'm still, I think we're all a part of it. It built up to that, but yeah, if anybody ever asks, is Dabo like that? Is is he on? Is he turn it off when he goes off camera? And I'm like, no, that's how he was when he was a wide receiver coach, and then right when he's a head coach. I mean, you know this. I mean, it's just authentic, and he had endless amount of energy. I'm sure as he gets older, it's probably slowing down a little bit, but I doubt it. I mean, I'm sure he probably still goes. I can only imagine what the football hoops games are like. I'm sure they're like they were back in the day.
Well, he's got at his mansion, he has a basketball gym there, and so when they have recruiting visits, official visits, you have 20 recruits over there or whatever. Guess what they do after dinner? Go play basketball. And so, yeah, his competitive juices are being stoked pretty well. I have to ask you touched on this. So he's like, man, you need to stay. Here's what we're gonna do. We're not only going to win, but he had a vision for the branding of the program.
Yep, absolutely.
And of course, that branding involved around 13, 14, 15. Clemson became a social media pioneer
Mecca.
And like a colossus. I guess around that time, are you like, damn, I could have been a part of that.
I mean, not many people know this, and my close friends know it. And I mean, I guess we're separated enough now where I can share. But like that was when I went and told him in 2010 that I was leaving. He said he goes, I have a vision. He goes, I'm telling you, Chad, I have a vision, and I want you to be a part of this. We're building a brand. It's not just about winning; it's about building a brand. And once we build it, the winning will come too. And it was the hardest thing I ever said no to, honestly. Like, and I give him credit to this day. He had that. He created all that. Like, that was his vision, his idea. Now, obviously, he hired a lot of talented people to take that on. And I tell everybody this, and Duke basketball obviously has a massive social media following too. I've been a part of, 2 programs that have really help push social media for college athletics. But I mean, that was all Dabo. I give him 100% credit. He had the vision, he had the idea. And to this day, I wonder if I was too chicken to, or like you said, I mean, Larry, they were 6-7 in 2009. And, I didn't know what was going to go on. And Duke had invited me up. My first interview, we did a tour, and my boss at the time, John Jackson, introduces me and my wife to Coach K, and he was the exact opposite that I always thought he was. At the time, this is a Clemson person, a Clemson grad. Man, I didn't like anything coming out of the Tobacco Road. I wanted Carolina to lose. I wanted Duke to lose. But man, when you see the human side of these coaches, and you've seen it. You work in athletics long enough. They're all humans, and they can turn it on and off. But man, Coach K was, you want to talk about a full court press too. Like he was great. And then you go back and like, all right, I'm going to Duke. I'm going to take this job. And Dabo sells you on this vision and this opportunity. And, I just thought Duke was too good of an opportunity and it's been great for both of us. I absolutely have benefited, and I love what I do now. But there are obviously times, especially with the success that Dabo and the football team has had, and the whole athletic department. Clemson's had the golden years. The past 15 years have been the golden years for Clemson athletics too. But it was too hard to turn around or turn away from. But he had the vision. He had it all. People ask all the time if that was his idea. I mean, and the winning helps. Like, I tell this with Duke basketball too, like social media, your brand, when you win, people want to follow you and see what you're doing. When you lose, nobody cares what you're doing. So it kind of goes hand in hand. But Dabo had the idea, he had the plan, and he enacted on it. And, kudos to him. It's been awesome.
Also, when you win, Dabo's one-liners, where when you're losing, they seem corny. When you're winning, they seem, oh, that's brilliant.
Yep, let's throw it on a shirt. Let's put it on social media. I mean, it was with Instagram and Twitter, at the time, Facebook and MySpace when he first got hired, were still kind of, that was it. And then with Instagram and Twitter coming along, and now TikTok, but at the time, I mean, he wanted to get his brand out and give people a look at the football team, humanize the players. That was the thing that I don't think when I was there, there was no humanization of the players, and you get to know the players, the media gets to know the players, but like, I think it's been great. And he was all about putting the players out there and putting himself out there and opening up the doors, I guess you could say, to Clemson football. And it was attractive to recruits, and obviously it's paid off in dividends.
That's all I got, man. I could talk to you probably for 2 more hours, but you probably have
I know,
to
man.
do
It's
some
been
work
great
today.
catching up with you, dude. When you sent me a text, I was like, all these memories came flooding back of, Kevin. I do have one memory of Kevin Nickelberry and Billy Napier getting into an argument, and Kevin had his foot on the ball. He put the ball on the ground and just put his foot on the ball and said, "We're not playing. We're not going to do it. We're not playing another." And we were at a standstill and Billy's like, "Cool." I remember Billy walking out. There were times plenty of people just walked out of a game, and you didn't see them. And they walked out. Cooler heads prevailed every time, but there were plenty of times where people had to step in between or just walk out. It was intense, but man, I really appreciate you reaching out. I miss talking Clemson sports. I still have plenty of friends down there, and when Clemson comes here too, the faces have changed a little bit, but there's still some common faces. Kyle Young still comes up every now and then, but I really appreciate you reaching out and bringing back these memories to me.
Did you leave in the summer of 10? Do you remember?
Yes. Yep. It was my last job responsibility was Omaha.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went to Omaha baseball 02, 03, and 10.
Well, I was going to ask you about the spat between Dabo and Napier during football practice that October, but you weren't here, so I guess you can't speak on it.
No, I missed that. Yeah. Yeah, that was, there's some great stories from, I remember, I'll tell you this quick story. My very first day ever working for Clemson football, Tommy Bowden was coaching, and I did not know at the time, I guess Tommy was making a strong effort to get rid of all the navy blue. He wanted purple to come back. And the only clothes I had, Clemson clothes, were navy blue. I had orange and navy blue. And so they set me up in a lift one day with a guy named Bobby Ratu, who was the GA at the time. And I remember Brad Scott, he always would call us video boys. "Hey, video boy, film this. Video boy." He'd look up in the lift, and he didn't know any of our names. We were just video boys. And I was shooting offensive line OL drills, and Brad yelled at us, and Tommy, for whatever reason, Tommy looked up at me when Brad yelled at us, and Tommy said, "Hey, video boy, get out that lift." So we brought the lift down. He said, "You need to go in right now, see Abe and Fonz, and make sure you don't ever come back out here with navy blue on again." And I never forget, I left with more Clemson gear that day. I thought, this is the best thing ever. I was a sophomore in college, and I bet I had to have walked out with $600 worth of Nike gear. And I'm like, what? This is the best job ever. And I was in love with it from that point on. So that's how I got initiated into Clemson athletics.
Were you the first commissioner? Was NTBA around before you took over as commissioner?
It was. Rick.
That's right. You already said that.
Yeah, Rick had started. They had done. I don't know who played. I remember Jack Hines. They said Jack Hines used to come play. Yeah, so imagine that. Jack Hines used to play, and I'm trying to remember who else. There were a couple of. I'm trying to remember the GAs at the time. We never had the mad scientist come out there. I don't think he never came and played. He might have came and played. Rob Spence, Vic Koenig came out a couple times. I think everybody came out and tried their hand a couple times just to see what it was about.
All right, Chad. Thanks so much for your time, sir.
Appreciate it, Larry. Take care, man.
All right. I am joined by the second commissioner on the podcast. We just had Chad Lampman on, and honored to be with his esteemed successor, Bobby Couch. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, Larry. How are you, man?
I'm great. The matchup with Will Wade, of course, has stoked a lot of old memories, and I think I sent you. Yeah. I think I sent you the article I wrote yesterday, right?
Yeah, yes, you did. It was awesome. Kind of a little step back in memory lane there, reading through that. Those were great times. They sure were.
So, Chad, we had a lot of fun talking about the duties of the commissioner, and he gave me his definition of it, which basically just consists of email. But give me your definition. It was beyond just setting it up. It was also, given how many strong personalities and heated moments there were, it also involved, I remember distinctly, you having to step in and be the judge, so to speak.
Yeah. It was, it was a lot of fun. I remember when Chad made the decision to move on and take the job at Duke. I felt a lot of pressure when he handed over the commissioner's duties. So I just remember at times seeing him trying to pull everybody together, and then you get out on the court and all of a sudden there's a ruling that needs to occur. So we probably should have developed a rules manual, if you will, because I can think of several rules that evolved over time. But the biggest thing Chad told me when he handed things over to me from a there's kind of an art and a science for hitting the right number of people to call game on. And so we had our listserv of people that we would send the email out to. And so I remember when I started, I went into kind of a diatribe of, hey, just checking in with everybody, seeing who won, And so that Chad told me, you don't need to do that. You just need to say who's in. Very simple, Bobby. Who's in? That's as simple as you can be. And so over time you would find out, hey, you get to that 6 or 7 number, maybe 8. You got to know everybody that was playing. And so when you kind of got to that magic number where you felt like you could have 4-on-4 at a minimum, but certainly 5-on-5, you didn't want to have 20 or 25 because that really made it difficult. You would call game on. And so I think over time people understood that, hey, if the commissioner's calling game on at 9:45 in the morning, you better lace your shoes up and get there early because there's going to be a lot of people showing up. So I also remember at times when we would have, a football meeting or something would come up and we'd have some guys that couldn't show up. And I remember standing outside the door, just praying that somebody's going to show up so we can play at least 3-on-3 or 4-on-4. So anyway, but good times and you're right that the complexities of playing and knowing that, hey, professionals like yourself, Larry, people in the media played with us, coaching staffs, people that were on faculty or people that were at Clemson or in the community, knowing that everybody had an hour, maybe an hour and a half window at the most to play, trying to get everything in and, everybody get a good workout in. It was certainly met with challenges at times as well. So,
yeah, I don't think that kind of thing could happen today, not just at Clemson, but anywhere. I mean, you've got $12 million coaches. You got these fortresses that, as Chad pointed out, which is true at Duke as well with their basketball program, everything is so siloed now. They're so insulated. And with social media the way it is, you can't risk having some random person show up and, Dabo yells at somebody and then that's out on social media, 10 minutes later and you gotta deal with it. I guess it's just that type of thing could only happen during that era, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely a different world now. I remember when Dan Radakovich got there as the athletic director, we had built our listserv pretty helpfully, and we had more people probably from the community coming that didn't have the ties like you guys and and Benji Cumbie and the Crumpton brothers and folks that were close with the program in addition to the coaching staff and those of us that worked at IPTAY or wherever. And so you never really knew who was going to show up. And I remember during that time, there was an incident. And so there was, a guy from the community that got upset, and then coach was involved, in just trying to walk away or whatever the case may be, and so it was kind of a typical thing that goes on, if you will, in a pickup basketball game. but the next thing you know, I get called to the principal's office. I'm sitting in Dan Radakovich's office, and I'm talking about my duties as the commissioner, not as a senior associate director for IPTAY. And he's basically telling me I got to shut this thing down. And to your point, Larry, it had gotten to where, hey, listen, the football program had a lot of success. And so you started to understand that, hey, there may be some people from the outside that may have a different agenda. And so we had to kind of cull the list, if you will, and go back to the insiders. And so I remember we took about a 2 or 3 month hiatus. And of course, the first person that called me to ask what the heck was going on was Coach Swinney, because he wanted to get back out on the court. And I'm like, hey, dude, we had to shut this thing down because of you, So anyway, but it was, but you're right. That was the first time I really saw that, things are changing in college sports. And I mean, I played pickup ball, noon ball at Virginia Tech. When I worked there, it was great. Did the same thing when I worked at the what's now Prisma. It was a Greenville Health System back in the day. And I've got so many people that I see from time to time or stay in touch with because of it. But it was a lot different back then. You could just, life was different. And especially in the sports world now, it's just, now if basketball wants to play noontime ball, I'm sure they're doing it over there at their facility. And then, you've got even within our basketball program now, you've got the women's program's going to have their own practice facility, Swan Pavilion's expanding. Everybody used to go to Huckabee Annex. That was the only place we had to play, So now it's very different.
All right, I think we could talk in generalities here about the incident you referenced and not name any names. Yeah. But was it the guy who showed up wearing a Gamecock shirt?
Yeah. He had either it was a Gamecock shirt or a Gamecock pair of shorts. And so there was mention that, hey, this is a Clemson noontime pickup game, and it was all in jest and fun. It was just kind of like, hey, you can't come up in here, wearing enemy apparel, or whatever the case may be, and so that's what started the conversation, and so then it was just. Then the next game, there was just more chatter and stuff. And you know how these things can get heated. And then, the next thing you know, there's a stoppage of play. and the conversation continued. I remember one of our former basketball players, he was on the men's staff at the time. And he's looking at me I'm like, hey, dude. I know I'm the commissioner, but I'm like, I've never been faced with this situation. So I just kind of had to, hey, I think we need to shut this thing down. And so we just called it a day. And that's when I got the call to the principal's office. And there was, no harm, no foul, if you will. But it was just a reminder that, hey, we need to, we really need to know everybody that comes in here. And, there's just kind of some unwritten rules that weren't in the commissioner's manual of, just kind of how you carried yourself. And, all of us had to work together in some capacity, whether you're in the media or whether, I was in IPTAY working with the football staff. And so, there was just kind of an unwritten rule that, hey, listen, go out here, you play hard. Things are going to get, rough from time to time, or there's going to be, everybody's competitive, but hey, when it's done, we shake hands, we move on. And we're not out there trying to win championships. We're just out there, trying to get in shape. So
this was about to escalate between Dabo and this guy. I don't think I was there.
Yeah, yeah. And so he actually, this guy was actually a friend of someone that played pretty regularly at the time. And so this guy, he was, from the community. He also had played. I mean, it wasn't like his first time there.
Yeah.
And I was kind of shocked too. I even said something to him when he got there. I'm like, well, I was like, did you not? I said, listen, I got some, we have a bunch of, Clemson apparel. I can, switch you out of that. And he, at first he was laughing. He's like, man, this is the only thing I had clean. And it's the only thing. And so it was just, I thought, hey, this is not going to be a problem. But then, this was probably 7 or 8 games into the season. So South Carolina was on the schedule.
Oh, man.
Down the road. And so Coach, he's competitive. And so he's pays a lot of attention to detail. So he just didn't want that to be taking place on a Clemson court, a noontime basketball court. So anyway, he was. This gentleman never came back. He never played again. So
you could insert a joke here about being at the bottom of Lake Hartwell, but it's just a joke. It's just a joke.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, all right, one of the questions that this was a very popular article yesterday and still is today.
Yeah.
And one of the questions I've been thinking that has had my wheels turn, and somebody asked, who would be your all NTBA starting 5?
Ooh,
and you were there long before I was. I think I was around 09 is when I started Cup, 08, 09. And so I have a pretty clear starting 5 in mind. I'm gonna run it by you to see if it gets the commissioner stamp of approval.
Yeah,
I got to go with Neil Burton with one of the spots.
Oh yes, yeah, Dr. Burton. Yes.
Do you agree?
One of the most crafty. One of the most crafty, skilled basketball players that I've ever played with. I mean, just whether it's pickup or just observing, being around sports. I mean, just incredible player. Yeah, absolutely.
Almost like the small miniature point guard version of the Joker or Luka.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Kind of had some John Stockton in him and some Luka at the same time. You're right.
All right, and my other 4, another backcourt guy would be Daryl Oliver, the women's basketball assistant.
Yes, Daryl Oliver. Yeah, he was another very crafty guy that could use both hands. A great passer, score, had more physicality than you might want to give him credit for because he was a little bit older than the guys that were out there. But an outstanding player. Hated to lose. You wanted to be on Daryl's team, because if it got late in the game and you were behind and you were on the other team, there are going to be some fouls called that to extend the game. And that was when DMAC, he implemented I call it the DMAC rule, but he put the clock on it late, kind of toward the end of when we played, a 10-minute running clock because some of those games with Daryl they could go into the 30, 35-minute range to win by 2. So, but yeah, one hell of a player, unbelievable.
All right, the other 3 would be former football players who were staffers at the time. You mentioned DMAC; he would be on my starting 5.
Oh yeah.
The other 2 would be Rashard Hall, who would probably be my number 1, like just an animal on the basketball court, unstoppable.
Yeah.
And then Michael Hamlin. That would be those would be my 5.
Yeah. I would agree. I would agree with you on those 5. I tell you 2 others, and these were early on guys, and we actually had Brandon Streeter 2.0 when he came back on the staff, but he was there as a GA along with Willie Simmons. And those 2 guys were incredible basketball players. Now, those 2 guys, were at the time were young, had just finished playing. I think Willie's now at FIU. I think he's the head coach there now. But those two guys were very skilled basketball players, and that's what I found so amazing about guys like Richard and D-Mac and Michael Hamlin. I mean, these guys, as you know, Laird, those guys could have played Division I basketball.
Yes.
I mean, they made a choice. So I'm going to go play Power 5 football and be an All-American doing that. But you know what? I could have probably done the same thing in basketball if I wanted to. I mean, those guys were just exceptional, not just exceptional athletes, but just very skilled basketball players. So yeah, I agree with your top 5, and then I would probably put in there. I'd probably slide in maybe coming off the bench, Willie Simmons and Brandon Streeter.
So you mentioned heated confrontations or conversations. Were you there when Brad Brownell and Earl Grant came down, and Brownell and Dabo were getting into it?
Oh yeah, I was. And Coach Brownell, he didn't play very often,
right?
But he did come play from time to time. And Earl was, you talking about a scrappy player. I mean, I would, obviously Earl Grant, Shaka Smart, Will Wade. I mean, these guys could, they could play ball as well. Earl was probably, and I tell you another player, Toro Coleman.
Oh, yeah.
She was an incredible player. And I tell you, when she was playing and Earl Grant were playing, you better strap it on, because they were going to be physical. They were going to, there's probably going to be some blood. But yeah, I was there. I remember, Coach Brownell. I mean, he had his head coach whistle around his neck. And so, I love playing with him because he would like direct traffic and stuff out there and tell people where to, how to set up and spread the floor and keep moving. I mean, he would be yelling, keep moving. I mean, he does that with his own players.
Yes.
He's yelling at us out there to keep moving. And so anyway, yeah. So I don't remember the particulars, but coaches, just like players, I mean, they're highly competitive, as you know. And so there's always everybody's always going at it at some point.
My recollection was that Dabo was used to getting his way in terms of none of the football graduate assistants and staffers would call fouls on him. And then Brownell started calling him on some of the stuff, and Dabo started to protest, and then the game stopped. And it got pretty heated. Brownell's team won, and I think I recall Brownell being very giddy walking off the court that day.
Yeah. That's exactly what happened. And it was one of those things. Like, I love being on Dabo's team, but it seemed like if he was on the other side, no one wanted to guard him. So I can't tell you how many times I had to guard him. And so when he was a wide receivers coach, when I first got there, this is when Chad was the commissioner. I got the duties to guard Dabo. I'd never met him. And so, this guy, he's out there, his personality, man. He's flying around. There's never a shot that he didn't want to take. And so I was like, how my competitive juices, you play with me. There's sometimes I go into like demon mode when I'm out there playing. And he sent me, I got into demon mode like immediately with him. And it's like the next thing, we're like going at it. And we're not like bowling up to each other. And so anyway, but that was kind of my introduction to him, because he's one of the most competitive human beings that, you'd ever play a sport. He'll want to play one-on-one. When we wouldn't have people show up, and he did, he didn't care if it was one-on-one or two-on-two. He was going to play and get his workout in, and he was going to win. He's going to find a way to win. So that's what I love about him. And, Brad's got that same competitive spirit himself. So
somebody on our message board said that Dabo knocked somebody's teeth out one time. I don't recall that. Do you?
I may have not been there for that, but I wouldn't doubt it. I tell you who almost knocked my teeth out was Brent Venables. So it was the week we were playing the Georgia Bulldogs. We were going down here to play. We actually lost in Athens, and he had just, I think he may have been new to the staff. I think he was new to the staff that year. And so anyway, lucky me, he was guarding me. And so I should have known when he showed up with a mouthpiece in, like, okay, this is probably he always had his Whoop watch or whatever, like he was always, he's super fit and always into fitness. And so we'd always have to stop playing because his watch would pop off. And he had a mouthpiece in. So I go out, I fade out on the wing to take a little short jumper. He comes running out like a linebacker coming down on a run and has his hand out. It goes completely through like my elbow area as I'm shooting, and he hits me right in the eye, my left eye. And so this is 2 days before the Georgia game. And so we have an event set up down there with our alumni and travel group. I have to get up and speak to the group, and I've got a black eye. It's like, one that you would put like, a 20-ounce steak on to try to get the swelling to go down. And of course, everybody's wondering, like, why is this guy having a black eye? And I'm like, listen, I tell you one person is ready to play today, and that's Brent Venables, because he gave me this black eye 2 days ago playing pickup basketball.
Did you call the foul?
So anyway, he did. He was so apologetic. He's Brent's awesome. One of my favorite people. And, he is, oh, Bobby, I'm so sorry. He was like, he was so apologetic, and, he just, that's his personality. That's how his motor is. He just goes. And so anyway, but that's I wasn't there for when Dabo knocked somebody's teeth out, but that wouldn't surprise me. We had a few injuries. Dislocated kneecaps and, broken ankles and a lot of dislocated fingers and shoulders and all kinds of stuff. So
there was a guy I was guarding. This was actually on the main court at Little John, and I was chasing him around, and all of a sudden he crumples to the floor on the wing, and he goes, "Why did you kick me?" And I said, "I didn't kick you, man." He tore his Achilles.
Oh yeah.
Which is the sensation you get when you tear your Achilles. It feels like somebody has kicked you in the back of the leg.
Oh yeah. That's the worst feeling. I just remember seeing so many of those types of injuries. And I played small college football at Wofford, and my wife was like, she would just pray for me every time I played basketball, because I never had an injury that kept me out of playing football, but I got so many injuries playing basketball. I had so many stitches, and the last time I played, we came back off of COVID, and this is when Amanda Butler's staff got in place, and they wanted to start playing, and so I kicked it back off, noontime ball, and this is when, to your point earlier, football had kind of started playing down and doing some other things down at the football operations complex. And so I'm out there day one. We had so many players, we had to go side to side on the short court in Swan Pavilion. And I had a GA that just kind of stopped in front of me. I wasn't anticipating, and I just flipped right over him and landed right on my shoulder. And I got a grade 3 tear in my right shoulder. And that was it. I hung the tennis shoes up. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do it. I had to call Christy and like, you're not going to believe what happened.
And you had stitches
you got hurt playing basketball again. Yep.
And you got stitches at one point too?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes. I had stitches from playing noontime ball at Clemson. I had them from playing in Greenville. Just had to drive myself to the emergency room when I was in Greenville. Just catching an elbow or somebody's head.
Yeah.
But all good. It's all fun. Some of the greatest friendships, some of the greatest memories that I ever had at Clemson. And I mean, the fact that we're talking about it today, and you and I are staying in touch with Chad, and I think about all those times when as Clemson was rising up through the ranks, certainly in football and in the other sports, that we were all there before that, and we got to see what Clemson was truly like and how friendships were built, and the cloth that the people are made from, and I'll be forever grateful. I mean, seems like every time I run into D-Mac or Rashard or somebody, we always talk about noon ball, about all those great times playing. So,
yeah, you don't realize in the moment that those are the good old days, but it's really cool to look back and recognize that now.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
All right, Bobby, this has been awesome. Mike Morrell is next, so this is quite the trio here.
Hey, tell Mike he might have been the most deadly shooter that ever walked on the NTBA court. Incredible score.
I'll let him know. Thanks so much, Bobby, for your time. I appreciate it.
All right, Larry. Hey, same. Talk to you later.
Upstate foodies, want to take a moment to talk to you about our favorite taco spot, Willie Taco. 5 locations across the upstate. This award-winning team has been serving up fresh taco fusion for a solid decade now. The chefs at Willie Taco utilize the freshest, most creative, and sometimes unexpected ingredients in their kitchens. Come see why Southern Living, Garden and Gun, and Food and Wine Magazine are raving about Willie Taco and their signature offerings, such as their Southern Tide, crispy avocado, Nashville hot chicken tacos, literally flavors you will not find anywhere else, folks. And don't forget about the cocktails. Super fresh margaritas, ice cold cerveza, and over 80 tequilas served up daily from behind the bar. So don't wait, folks. Your Willie Taco Familia is ready to serve you up their twist on funky, fresh fusion. It's the Willie way. When you're ready for a complete renovation in your home or business, open the door to more with Harris Home and Harris Commercial. Their local experienced team will totally transform any room space, from beautiful floor coverings to construction to finished details. Harris handles every step of your renovation process, whether it's a kitchen or living room or an industrial or educational setting, like some of the positively stunning work they've done at Clemson University. Go to discoverharris.com and experience a total renovation transformation from Harris Home and Harris Commercial. Another loyal supporter of the Dubcast is Blackacre Law Firm in Greenville, a subsidiary of Parham Smith and Archambault. Blackacre helps South Carolina residents achieve their dreams of home ownership by providing experienced professional representation for real estate closings. Attention to detail is crucial in real estate law. Blackacre is committed to making sure nothing gets by them preparing residential or commercial closings. Blackacre also offers estate planning services for their clients in the Greenville area. Find out more about Blackacre at 864-326-3507. Okay, joined by Mike Morrell, who Bobby Couch, who I just got off the phone with, said you were the deadliest sharpshooter in NTBA history. Your comment, sir?
I think that speaks more to the maybe the amount of non-shooters that have made their way through the ranks of the prestigious Noontime Basketball Association. So while I'll take that, I also know who I'm up against. So
first of all, or second of all, 7 years at UNC Asheville. That's an impressive run, man. Good for you, and proud of you. A lot of people proud of you.
Yeah, thanks, man. I mean, I think back to, just where I've been and the people I've been around, and obviously I'm from not far from here, an hour away over in Tennessee, and Clemson was, like Coach Smart alluded to when you all spoke, that was my first introduction into not only big time football, but really big time anything. And so when I went there as a graduate assistant, I was just blown away. And to think about where we're at now and where all the people that went through there at that time, man, it's a really fun time to think about.
Clemson, of course, not far from Asheville, not far from Western North Carolina. And obviously we were, not far at all away from massive devastation. What was that like? Not just as living there, but leading through that, leading a group of young men and coaches and an entire team through that disaster?
It was exhausting. It was rewarding. It was like anything, any words you can come up with probably would fit into that particular sentence. It was, the thing about that was different about it, Larry, compared to like a COVID situation that you've never experienced, is like there were only a few, there were only a few schools going through it. And, Dustin Kearns, another Clemson alum, he's the head coach up at App State. Like, I remember us talking through that time, and it's like, man, everybody else is still out there practicing, and we didn't have our team on campus. And so we were off for 11 days. And then we actually relocated to Charlotte for 3 weeks, and basically, did a training camp, if you will, there, because we had no school, we had no water, we had no electricity. And so that was essentially the month of October for us. So, man, it was, when you looked around Asheville, which, there were parts of Asheville, as you know, were just completely devastated. Then, you find out quickly that you're not a victim. But as I told everybody, we were definitely inconvenienced.
And give us, for those who, I have yet to go back to Asheville. I've been a pretty regular visitor up there over the years. We're planning on coming up and staying on the outskirts in April with some friends. Mm-hmm. And our objective is basically like, hey, you want to help those folks out, go eat at their restaurants, go back, and help the economy. What is it like? What is obviously not even close to fully recovered. Some parts just wiped off the face of the earth. What is it like now? How would you describe it?
Yeah. So I live actually in the River Arts District, in West Asheville, Larry, which is when you saw some of those most devastating French Broad, which is the river that flooded here, along with a couple others. Like, I live less than a half a mile from there, so I kind of saw it in real time the whole way through. That area is just completely, it's just completely devastated. Like, there's a White Duck Taco that was a huge hangout for everybody, and if you're a connoisseur of Asheville, most people know the White Duck Taco. It's gone. It's not there. There's nothing but dirt there anymore. And so, that community, which is really the community that I live in, has got a long, long way to go. But like you said, man, like, there's a ton of community ran businesses around here that have bounced back. And I've been really proud of the area and how people have just, came together to really help. So it's, there's a lot of people rolling into town, and you'll enjoy it. But I would encourage you to go around some parts of town, because if you've been here several times before, it's going to utterly blow your mind at what some of the stuff looks like in Biltmore Village. And again, the River Arts District and places like that. But bouncing back as strong as ever as well.
All right. What was your initial reaction when you saw Clemson's first round opponent, McNeese State, and Will Wade?
I just started laughing, and I'm like, I know Will Wade. He's loving this. He's loving this. Like, he's Will. I replaced Will there, just so you know. Like, he was a GA. And went to and was a Dabo for a year, and I kind of came in behind Will there at Clemson. And but that Will was the first person that I got to know when he was running Coach Purnell's summer camps. I came there as a summer camp worker, and Will was basically running the camp as a student manager, Larry. And if you know anything about Will's reputation while he was there, it was that he didn't eat, he didn't sleep, he didn't do anything but basketball. And so that was Will's reputation, and he and Coach Smart were extremely close during their time there. So when Will left, he was really the person that got me in the door, because Coach Smart was kind of hiring the GA for Coach Purnell. And so that Will's how I got in the door there. So, I think it's awesome, man. Like, I don't know that the selection committee did that for a reason, but I know this. I can see the smirk on Will Wade's face right now. You know, when that opponent popped up on the TV screen.
You know, Shaka said both of y'all are alums, but I just realized you're not an alum of Clemson.
I went to Milligan. I went to grad school at Clemson.
Okay, gotcha. So yes, you are technically, yeah.
Yeah. So So Will went to undergrad there and worked obviously for Coach Shyatt. And now I was in grad school there for 1 year, and that was really, I think that was like the first online degree program that Clemson had, and it was youth leadership development. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing to think how far things have come since then.
What do you remember from the NTBA days? What are the most vivid recollections?
I remember Rick Bagby. I remember, like choosing teams. I guess just because of Coach Swinney and how different, knowing him a little bit as an assistant football coach, wide receivers coach, and when he became the head coach, and it's just watching him, and then like I told you, this is funny, but like his shot attempts went way up when he got promoted to head coach. Man, it's like you can't tell me nothing. I'm picking the teams, just like we usually played 3 games, Larry. I think it was 3 games, and it was an hour. And I remember those football guys, they would just they were sprinting over from meetings, whatever it was. And we were doing the same as guys, we only got like a few minutes here. Get the teams, let's play, and let's get out of here. But man, I'm telling you, there were some battles. You remember Josh Postorino? Josh played at Dayton, and Josh was a good player. He played for Coach Purnell at Dayton, so it wasn't like a bunch of scrubs out there, but the ones who could really play basketball tended to stand out a little bit more.
Shifting gears a little bit here, when Will said Sunday at the press conference at McNeese, he says, "Yeah, we schedule our practices around Clemson football." A lot of people were like, "Oh my God, that's amazing." That's not a new thing. Yep. Y'all did that at VCU when y'all were all together.
We did.
And at
so
Texas?
When we got there, that when we couldn't at Texas because we had football, and Coach Smart would never talk about Clemson at Texas because we were at Texas.
Yeah.
But boy, we followed Clemson at Texas too. But back to VCU, we had no football team, and Coach Smart, when we went to Clemson, when we were there working, he was a D3 guy. I was an NAIA guy. We didn't know football. We had no fandom. And so, boy, when we started rooting for the Tigers, man, we just were all in. So when me, Will, and Coach Smart were all on the same staff up at VCU, particularly because of just how much that we rooted for Clemson, me and Will, we were able to bring Coach Smart into the fold, and he ended up loving it. We got together, we watched the national championship game. I remember over at Coach Smart's house and we're in the middle of our season, and Coach was like, "Hey, let's come over to the house. Let's watch the game tonight." I will say this too. And I don't know as much about Will, and I was never truly with Coach Swinney, but I knew Jeff Scott, I knew Justin Stepp. We obviously knew Coach Swinney, from his time, but it was all these guys were still around there, and it's how could you not root for them? Because they were such great dudes. And I remember when Billy got promoted, to, OC, and it's just man, I didn't care what school I was at. I mean, I was at Texas, football crazy school, and I was watching the Tigers, man. So it was awesome. But yes, at Clemson, at VCU, we literally would move practice around a couple, because Coach, the Tigers play at 12 tomorrow. We We could practice at 10 and be done. Just throw a little bug in his ear.
That's amazing. What was it like to see them? I mean, I said this earlier, I think with Chad Lampman, he had him on as well. He's been at Duke for 15 years, but what was it like watching from afar, seeing that football program establish or reach heights that nobody on the planet except maybe Dabo himself thought was possible?
It was fun, man. I don't know. I mean, selfishly speaking for myself, it was fun because you knew, like, when we were there, football wasn't great, and halfway through that season that they let Coach Bowden go, that was my second year there. And I just, one of my closest friends there was Derek Riley and Ryan Solkowski, because we went through the same grad degree programs together, Jeff Scott, like those guys, like, and so you knew how hard they were working. You knew that, like, and at Clemson, how important football is. And then, whatever year it was for Coach Swinney, 3, 4, whatever, it's like to see them, like, not just have success, like what they were doing wasn't just success. They were killing it. And, man, it was just, selfishly, it was just so fun to watch because, like, I'm not going to lie to you, man. All my friends growing up are Tennessee fans. I grew up an hour outside of Knoxville. I talked more junk to them during that stretch. It was like, man, you couldn't tell me nothing about Clemson. And so, it was just because when you were there, all you ever kind of heard about was, 82 and Danny Ford and all that. It's like, now you got Dabo, who is just killing it, and who, like, and again, I wasn't like I was friends with Coach Swinney or whatever, but I'll tell you this, there was never a time that Coach Swinney didn't make you feel important when you were around him. Even after, he was the head ball coach there. I loved it. Like, I just thought he was just the best guy. He was just a cool dude, man.
And people who maybe weren't around then or don't remember the Purnell ascent, with how good y'all were and how much the fans embraced it. A big part of that, Mike, was because football was such a disappointing roller coaster that by the time basketball started in January, it was like, oh, hell yeah. It's on with basketball because it was just such a brand and such a fun. You knew that team, those Purnell teams, were going to give the other team just absolute hell.
Yep. If there's one wish that I had for a mentor or whatever, Larry, and Shaka and I talked about this before, I just wish that Coach Purnell, like, and I know it's like 3 years in a row, they lost in the first round and everything, but I just wish people understood at the time what he did when the ACC looked like what it looked like, how impressive that was, because, what Coach I just think what he did took so much confidence and was genius because he stepped out and said, we're going to play a different style than everybody else. And this is the way we are going to do it. And there are very, very few people that would, again, have the wherewithal to step out and do that. And again, I don't know, because I'm so far removed from it, Larry. I don't know what the feeling is about Coach Purnell in Clemson after all these years. But I am telling you, man, the guy he loved Clemson, and he was a genius in how he built that program in that time, in my opinion.
Well, I can tell you, I mean, over the 10 years after he left, the appreciation absolutely was enhanced, because I distinctly remember when they hired Brownell, Terry Don Phillips and Billy DeAndre said, we think his style and his model is going to be able to get us, give us a deep run in the NCAA tournament. And I remember thinking in the back of my mind, and I remember reminding myself over the next however many years when they weren't going to the tournament, like, hey man, you got to get there first, and getting there that's not a baseline at Clemson. It's just friggin' not. And so, no, I think the appreciation for OP was certainly stronger over the next 10 years than it was when people were getting, kind of getting spoiled. I don't know if that's the word, but just maybe a little too much criticism for the inability to get past the first round.
And what Brad has done has been, amazing. Particularly the last, I saw a stat on his last 3 years the other day. It's like, whoa, wow. Just in the year they've had this year and last year, that's taken nothing away from him. Please don't get me wrong. I just, I think for me and Coach Smart and Will particularly as well, there's an affinity for Coach Purnell. And I would assume that when you can ask Coach Smart to this day, worked for Billy Donovan, whatever. He's like, okay, who had the biggest influence on you in terms of how you run your program? He'd say Coach Purnell. And just because he was the most positive coach I've had, it's like everything around you's burning down, and Coach Purnell's like, "Nah, man, there's good in this," and you're like, "What?" It was just amazing, man. And there's very, very few like him.
Give me an example. Does one come to your mind about when things were burning down?
Yep. Well, I wouldn't say burning down. That's just probably sensationalized a little bit. I remember when we lost. Yeah, I remember when we lost to Coach Lutz in Charlotte at home, my first year, and I believe it was right before the ACC started, or maybe we had played a game before Christmas or whatever. I don't quite remember. I believe it was my first year.
Yes. So January 9th, 2007. 82-72 loss at home as the 18th ranked team.
Yep. Yeah. And so I just remember losing that game to Charlotte at home, and I didn't have a ton of experience. And I know the rest of the staff was Coach Bradley and Frank Smith and Coach Smart. It was it's the end of the world. How do we lose? Like you just said, I didn't even know that top 25 in the country, and we lose at home to Charlotte. And now we're getting ready to start this ACC behemoth we're about to go through. And so I just remember Coach Purnell's just so positive. Hey, we lost the game, got to move on. We got to grow from it. And just being how are you so positive in the midst of losing a game? But that was the genius of him. Never too high, never too low. And I'm envious of that. And so that's probably the one example that really sticks out, because it was early in my tenure there, and I just hadn't experienced something like that.
You mentioned Brownell the last 3 years. The number is 74-29. This is this has been a hell of a second act for Brad the last several years. You could go all the way back to 2018 when they went to the Sweet 16. Stuff was happening that wasn't easy to pick up on in the moment, where that was allowing them to progress. Their facilities were improving, and then you get the liberalizing of the transfer portal and all that. He's become an absolute master of the hybrid sort of approach, combining the portal and the cultural sort of high school approach, where you got 4th, 5th, and even 6th year guys. I'm sure you've followed it from afar. What are your observations on how he's really kind of struck gold in a sense here, so late into his tenure here?
Yeah, I don't know so much about the particulars of their team in terms of players and things like that, but I think anybody who's having success in this landscape at that rate over the last 3 years, you've got something figured out, and you're convicted in whatever your plan is. And I think the thing that I see when on the outside looking in, and again, I don't follow it a ton, but it looks to me like Coach Brownell he's got a program there. He don't just have a team. He's built a program. He's built some that, he's obviously convicted in, and he can convey that to kids coming out of high school portal, wherever. And he's got plenty of examples of players who have came there, had success 1 year, 2 year, whatever it may be. And so, when you can do that, I think that really helps. You look at other schools in the ACC, they've not been able to figure it out like that. And they might quote unquote be better basketball jobs from a historical standpoint. But you can argue nobody's doing it better than him right now in that league in terms of having, whatever his plan is figured out.
Is your calendar cleared for tomorrow afternoon for this game?
I've watched one game since we got beat, Larry, and it was Furman Wofford. Bob Ritchie's one of my closest friends. Dwight Perry worked for us at VCU. So I watched that. I have not watched 1 second of another game. That being said, I'm tuned in to McNeese and Clemson. when that thing goes up in the air, I'll watch them and I'll watch Marquette, and that'll be it. But listen, man, I think if you got all the guys on this little podcast, Larry, and to speak of their, time at Clemson or whatever, and I know Coach Smart felt this. There's just something different about that place, man. And there's just something different that's special. I always thought it was cool how the basketball and the football programs there found ways to have relationships. Because, and again, no disrespect to Texas. All right, I was there for 3 years. I didn't even know the football coaches. Didn't even know them. But at Clemson, you knew everybody, man. Now, we were working right there in Jervey across from each other. And it seems like, and again, I'm kind of falling out of touch with a lot of people around there just because it's new faces or whatever. It seems like that's still the same. And good for them, because I follow, Clemson football. If it's on Twitter, if it's on IG, whatever, I'm following it. And I see that, Coach Swinney's over there at games, and it's just like, God, man, what a cool place to be a player, to be a fan, to be a coach, to be a writer, whatever, just because it's not that way everywhere.
Oh, and this will probably illustrate it best. Dabo, a couple of weeks ago, has his first press conference, to preview spring practice. And he has come up with a nickname for Victor Lokin, the Russian transfer they got from Cincinnati. And he can't wait. Like, that's the thing he's most excited about at the press conference, to unveil this nickname that he thought was so genius. Like, I think that kind of encapsulates the whole thing. Like, he's so proud of that whole basketball program.
So I know you got to go, but I'll give you one last thing that you'll like. You'll like this, Larry. Shane Beamer's a really good friend of mine. Mm-hmm. And I got to know Shane when I was an assistant at VCU through Coach Smart. And Shane would come to VCU practices when he was recruiting in town because he loved the way we played. He loved, that was a time where we were leading the country in steals, and, just loved the way that Coach Smart ran the program. Shane would come by. I mean, he'd come to games. I'm going to say he was there, once a month, but you'd see him a couple times a year. And so then when we were at Texas, Coach Beamer was at Oklahoma. So we got to see him. He'd come to shoot around when we were in town. Well, the last 2 out of 3 years, I went down and spent the day with Coach. He's been nice enough to let me sit in meetings, because I just think there's so much to learn from football. But I'm not going to lie to you. I feel guilty every minute I'm in there. There's a guilt. There's a guilt that comes over me, and because I feel like I'm cheating on my Tigers. But that being said, Coach Shane's just the best, man. And so I don't know that there's a state in the country that can say, we got two better dudes leading football programs than South Carolina and Clemson. And I might be the only, and Will laughs at this. He's like, hey, you pull for the Gamecocks. I'm like, I might be the only person that actually pulls for South Carolina and Clemson. But I feel guilty. I do. I'm not going to lie, because I feel like I'm cheating on the Tigers. So anyway,
I've got good friends on both sides of the rivalry, and I'm telling you, this is a tale as old as time. It's just a story of like this tribal like thing where you have to hate the other person. And so, Gamecock fans have always been like, oh God, that Dabo's such a fake cheerleader fraud. And I'm just like, man, you don't understand. Like, he ain't perfect, but he's a good dude. Like, and he's authentic. He's not fake, whatever. And then now this Clemson fans over the last few years, God, Beamer's such an idiot, such a fraud. And I'm just like, I think he's a good guy, like, I think they're so similar, Michael. Like, I mean, if you, I have a suspicion, and this can't be, it's not like they can talk about this because they're competitors. I have a suspicion that just, I pull it out of thin air. I'm just, trying to put two and two together, I guess, that at some point earlier in Shane's career, he probably came and hung out with Dabo and said, hey, I want some of your advice on building a culture. And, when I am the head coach of my own program, and Dabo might have given him his book or something, his binder of all that stuff. But it's something they can't, you can't divulge that when you're trying to cut the other guy's throat. But I got a feeling we'll hear about something to that effect once they are no longer competing against each other.
Yeah, I just think, and again, I have not talked to Coach Swinney in years, but I remember when, he would bring his sons to basketball camp when they were younger, and he'd come like watch them play, during the day when he could sneak over. And, it's Coach Swinney. He's head football coach here. Like, let's make for sure the game's running good, guys. Let's make sure his kids are not, get them on a good team. Like, and it was just like, nah, man, he was just there to kind of watch his boys, and hey, it just always made you feel like just a normal dude. And again, as I was the Dabo at the time there, I just remember thinking that was so cool, it's like, I'm nobody here, but Coach Swinney goes out of his way to say hello to make you feel, like he's just a regular dude. And knowing that when he's going back across that street and getting in his office, all the crazy things he's having to deal with. But when he was talking to you, man, he was just the most regular and humble, nice person. And that makes it really easy to pull for him too.
All right. Who are you going to pull for tomorrow?
Well, I'm pulling for Will. All discretion aside, and I have all the respect for Clemson basketball in the world. I'm more of a Clemson football fan than anything. But like, again, I wouldn't even know what Clemson was without Will Wade. I wouldn't even, I would have never been given that opportunity by Coach Smart and Coach Purnell had Will not put me in a position, to interview for that position, have success. And, there's a lot of different opinions out there on Will Wade, from, with all the stuff that one thing that cannot be really argued. And Will's one of the most loyal dudes there is. And, I'm worked with him long enough, and there's just no way I could pull against Will Wade. So.
Fair enough. I'm sure people understand
now, if he was playing the football Tigers, we'd have a conversation. So anyway.
Well, Mike, it's been great catching up, and I promise to keep in better touch. And man, kick some tail next year. You got a lot of folks pulling for you for sure.
Yeah, no, man, it's an awesome place down there, and this was fun, man. This was a lot of fun to reminisce.
All right, this was a bit longer than our normal podcast length, but I think you might agree, I enjoyed every minute of that. It went by very, very quickly. So many cool perspectives from all three of those guys, Chad Lampman, Bobby Couch, and Mike Morrell. Those days and those games were so long ago, but still so many vivid memories. Appreciate the support of our sponsors for their long-running partnerships with this podcast. Couldn't do it without them. And of course, thanks to every single one of you for your loyal listening. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the game tomorrow. Cheers.